Hello people, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we'll be doing or we'll be implementing a k-means algorithm, or we'll be doing a cluster analysis based upon the k-means. So before this also, I have made a video on k-means that was by using the sklearn library. So in that I did customer data segmentation, that is k-means data analysis. So now here in this we don't have any data set as in, but this is just for the purpose for you to understand how it is being calculated, because I have made a video way before based upon the k-means algorithm, how it basically works. But then I got certain requests from people like we need an implementation, or we need to see how it is done on paper, because first and foremost thing, to do k-means on paper in the real world or in any exams, no one will ask for you to calculate the k-means whether it's for 5 points or 10 points or any number of points, because uh, that doesn't uh, be enough for you to understand. Actually, that calculation is not worthy, because it will obviously take you time and it's not a good practice unless you are documenting the things. So what I thought is like, that activity, or how do you calculate the k-means, that I'll walk through by a means of code. So here also, since we don't have any data set, we'll be randomly creating a data frame, and from data frame we'll be doing certain cluster analysis and we'll be seeing how it is actually calculated. So a prerequisite to this video is like, the basic idea of what the k-means algorithm is. So also the k-means algorithm is very important when you go for any data science interviews, or at least in some minimal Python developer interviews also, they ask for k-means algorithm. So it is that important. So it's very much important to know what is a k-means algorithm and how it is calculated. So in the previous video, we did some kind of implementation with k-means plus plus and all. So that is one variant of uh, implementing the k-means. There are n number of ways by which you can implement k-means. You can build k-means without using the pandas library, completely upon the list. That is also possible by using the numpy libraries also. It is possible. Okay, by using purely on list without using pandas and without plotting anything also, that's done. So that is a different story. I'll be not walking through on all of those things, but just to give you an idea how complicated it is to do on paper and how it is easy to do the coding thing. Okay, so here I'll be not taking the risk of not using the pandas library, because everywhere pandas is used. So I'm using pandas, I'm using seaborn, and the color codes, that is true. And one from scipy spatial data distance, I'm importing pdist, square form, and cdist. So this is a standalone code, so that is just to for the spacing and all. When you plot these things on graph, so there should not be pixelated, so it should be well separated. So for those things, we have this pdist and square form and cdist. You can check this out. And I'm using the math warnings, the numpy, matplotlib, and from collections. So collections is another package or library. So from there I'm using a default dict. So there is one dictionary which is predefined data structure, and there is default dict. Both are different. So you can check those out also. So by introducing this new things, we'll get to know what are the different things, or what are the new things, or how we can change the code. Okay, so it's not a standard way of implementing the k-means, but there are n number of different ways also possible for doing the k-means algorithm. Okay, so in this we'll be seeing how we can do k-means from scratch. Means we'll be creating the data frame manually by not importing any data set as such. Okay, and then there is a CMap. So CMap is basically for mapping the clusters. So it's for that. So CMap is a cluster variable, uh, that is a map. And in this, what I'm storing is sns.cube helix palette. So in SNS, you have a cube helix palette. Now this palette is basically for uh, putting blocks. So whenever you plot something, you need to have a grid structure in square format. So for that purpose, we have this, that is dark 0.3, light 0.8. You can tweak these parameters. You can check the method definition or syntax for cube helix palette. Okay, so when we'll plot this, we'll come to know how it looks. So this is a new thing that we have encountered. And from matplotlib, we are importing the RC params for the figure size. So I'll just run this. Okay, and now I'm suppressing the warnings. Figure size, I'm keeping it as 9 cross 9. Okay, so just to make sure like the cluster centers and all the points are well visible. So first what we'll do is we'll actually write some functions. So these functions are the basis for the calculation. So what happens is like when we want to uh, have two clusters or three clusters, that is for k is equal to 3 or 2, when it is predefined by doing from the elbow method and all after estimation. So we need to do certain iterations. So in iterations, we need to calculate the same steps again and again. So in each step, you have to calculate the cluster centroids, or then the sum of squared errors, okay, the residuals and all those stuffs. So a better way is to modularize the things which are getting repeated. So for that simplicity purpose, first we'll be writing the logic, the main logic. After this, we'll be doing the function call. So that will be more easier for the user. Okay, so we'll be reusing this. So modularizing each of the functions that we used to write it manually. So we know in k-means the since the data points are very dense. Okay, so we'll be using a Euclidean distance, that is the L2 norm. So first say I have two clusters C1 and C2. So I need to have two clusters C1, C2. So distance to C1, and it takes a point. So I am returning mat dot square root point dot x minus centroids location C1 dot x. So this thing which you can see, that is on the left hand side. I mean to the, so this is the operator, and to the left hand side, which you can see, this is nothing but the Euclidean distance, that is square root of x1 minus x to the whole square plus y1 minus y to the whole square, that is nothing but this. Okay, so this is for one particular cluster center C1. Next for C2, we have the same thing again. So here we just change the label as C2. Okay, so now we have calculated the Euclidean distances to the cluster centroids from each of the points. Next, we calculate the distance to the centroids. So why to do this? Because we need to get to know which is the closest cluster to that point. So for that purpose we do this. So we store in a data frame, that is C1 dist, and we make use of this apply function. So we know from the pandas we did some activities on apply and other functions. So apply is one such function where you can use it or feed it to n number of different values. So it will calculate the distance to C1, okay, and axis 1 it will append on along the rows. 0 means along the columns, 1 means along the rows. Similarly for C2 distance, so it will calculate the distance to all the centroids. Okay, so that is simple. Then we define the closest centroid. So which is the closest centroid, that will determine by comparing. So that is a simple if else. If the point of C1 distance is greater than C2, then return C2 as the label, else return C1. Okay, so here the closest, I mean, like, you will not return C1 here, but I hope you get this because the cluster distance should be less. So that's why return C2, else return C1. Then we define the centroid assignment. So centroid assignment is basically for putting to which centroid that particular data point belongs to. So we again use a data.apply. So you can see how the apply function we can make use in such cases. So here also we are passing the or calling the get closest centroid. So that is this one. So this will basically run. It will give out the label as C1, C2. It will append to that particular data frame along the rows. So that is why this small function. And then we recalculate the cluster centers. So after one iteration, we need to recalculate it again. If you remember from the algorithm of k-means. So uh, we just compare with the centroid if it is equal to C1. So C1 points, or if it is equal to C2, then it is C2 points. Then we put the centroids of X and centroids of Y. Okay, we calculate the average mean. So centroids are calculated in that way only. So what you do is say for one cluster, say C1, you have some certain set of points, and for the other cluster also, that is C2, you have certain set of points. So you take the number of clusters belonging to that, or the number of points belonging to that clusters. You take the average. Average you mean by divide by 3 or 5. How many number of points are there? So that operation is basically done here. Okay. Then after that you compute the SSE. So two ways. Uh, when you stop the k-means algorithm, one way is like when the cluster centers do not change, okay, when there is no difference to the cluster center is observed. The other way is by using the residuals or the sum of squared errors. So sum of squared errors right from linear regression, everywhere it is used. So for prediction, for clustering, everywhere we use the SSE, not for classification. Now here in this context, this is for the clustering. So remember, SSE is also used for clustering in these places. Okay. So how do you compute the SSE? That is sum of squared errors. So if this particular quantity, that is which is there here, and we apply np dot square and we sum that thing. Okay. So it is sum of squared errors. You have to square each distances of the coordinates of that particular cluster. and then you have to sum it up. So it is as simple. So this is actually the way how it is written. So if you want, I can show you. Okay, so this is a normal routine that we usually write for computing the SSE, and then we return the total C1 and C2, that is the SST, total sum of squared errors, and finally we define a plot k-means. So that is basically for scatter plot. So the approach is like we'll be having one plot. So in one plot we'll have all the data points. So that is the hue centroid, and the size that we are keeping as stands for size 100. You can change that. So just for your visibility you can make it small, big, anyhow, xy. And then after that, from plt.scatter. So here keep in mind that this is a scatter plot, and that is from SNS. So from SNS you have to call the scatter plot, and from PLT, that is matplotlib, that is scatter. So this particular thing, that is centroids of x and centroids of y, this is basically for the, or for marking the cluster centers, and these are for the points. Okay, so we have, or we'll have two cluster centers, and one will be orange and one will be navy. And if you are having a question like how did we decide how many clusters we want, that is predetermined. Say k is equal to 2, we have done the elbow method analysis, we want to have two clusters. Okay, and on the y we have range, that is 0 to 9, it will span from 0 to 9, and here also 0 to 9. Okay, and plt dot show. So this is simple. So these are the steps to summarize. Initialize the centroids, calculate the distance of each point to the centroids, assign points to its nearest centroid, then recalculate the centroid positions. Then you have to repeat 2 to 4 until the cluster assignments or the cluster centers do not change. 2 to 4 means this step till this step. Okay, so that is the basic algorithm. So now since we are not taking any data set into consideration, so we need to manually create our data frame. So for that I have X. So these are my points. Okay, so I have 11 points, and on Y I have these many points. Both I'm taking into a list, and the index. So what this point 1 is like, it has the coordinate 1 1, point 2 as 2 2, point 3 as 3 1, zero point 0.4 as 3, and 2.5 as the coordinates when you put on to a, Cartesian coordinate. And this is the data. So the data frame that I'll be having is like a key and value. So x and the value of x, y and value of y. So that is a dictionary, and the index that I'm keeping here. Okay, and then I'll display. So this is not a print statement, this is a display statement. So it will display the data frame. So I'll just change this display to print, and we'll see what is the difference. And this is a scatter plot. So for all the points, when you want to put onto that Cartesian coordinates, this particular line does in that way, and PLT xlim and ylim 0 to 9. I'll just execute this. Okay, so you can see uh, this is a resultant of display when you call display. So point 1 has 1.0, 1.0, 2.0, 2.0, but we kept this as 1, 2, 2, all this as integers, whole numbers. So internally it will store it as floating point because you did have some points, that is 2.5, then 6.5, like this. So it will try to keep the granularity same across all the points. Okay. So uh, and this thing is my plot, that is a resultant of this. So these are my plots, how it basically looks. So if you want to do a plot also, you can plot in this way. And if I write it as print, or what is the difference? So see, you don't get that structure, but it looks in this way. So that is just for the visual purpose. So first step is to initialize the centroids. So cluster centroids. Now since we have not given any data about this, so I'm randomly taking or picking up the last point and the second last point, that is P10 and P11, as my initial cluster centroids. So since it all belongs to a data frame, I have to put it inside a data frame. So this is a method pd.dataframe. So far we have not come across pd.dataframe. I have not shown how uh, you manually create a data frame. This is how you manually create a data frame, by using pd.dataframe, and inside that data.loc p10 xy. Okay, so this is nothing but the label based indexing. You're passing the label p10 and its x and its y. Similarly for p11, its x and its y, and the index c1 and c2 as the centroids. So see in this way, c1 x and c1 of y, c2 of x and c2 of y. Okay, so now since we did the initialization, now next step is to do the iteration. So since we have already written our functions, so now that's not a big hassle, or we need not write again and again. So we have done the modularizing, so that's why it's very easy. So for calculating the distance to points to the centroids, we calculate, or we call the calculate distance to centroids, and then we get the data. So we calculated this, and then we are calling the data, or it is printing the data what we have. So what this table basically gives is like, so this part remain the same, that is this portion. Then what happens is like, the function call goes to this particular function, calculate distance to centroids. It is in this portion. Okay, so I said axis is equal to 1, so everything will be appended towards the right hand side. So c1 distance, c2 distance, it's basically calculating the distance of every point. So p10 to p10 is 0. Okay, and p10 to p11 is this distance, then p11 to p10 is this distance, p11 to the itself is 0. So rest of those you calculate in this way. Now imagine how it would be very tedious for you to do this on a paper. So that's why it's always good to write codes instead of pen and paper, because for some problems which are very long or which require tedious computations, it's not very goodly advisable for you to write on pen and paper. Okay, so then we assign each point to its closest centroid. So by this, or from this data, what you can make out is like which is the smallest distance. Is it C1 distance or C2 distance? It is C2 distance, right? So point 1 will be given to C2. Okay, then point 2 will be given to C2 again. Point 3 will be given to C2. Point 4 will be given to C2. Point 5 will be given to C1. Point 6 will be to C1. Point 7 will be to C1, and so on. So for that, we are calling the centroid assignment which we have. So that is this one. And in centroid assignment, it is internally giving the function call to get closer centroid. So it will redirect here. So from here, it will actually do the comparison. So this is how it works. So if I just run this, see, it actually is giving the labels to this particular points. Okay, so this right now, everything is happening within the first iteration. We are displaying the data that is resultant of this, and display the centroids what we have. So the centroids, mind you, this is the old one itself. We have not recalculated the centroids. So this data is same as this one. Okay, now we have to recalculate it again, because now the cluster assignments have changed. That's why we have to recompute the centroids. So this is a resultant of what I was showing. So after first iteration, our k means resulted in something like this. So this were our points, and this cross, what you can see, this was the resultant of what we wrote here, that is this particular line, orange and navy. So we are keeping a marker cross or X. So that's why it is getting this cross. And for all the points, now we just print the sum of squared errors. So associate iteration 1 is very high compared to these many points. That is, we have only 11 points, and at the very first iteration is very obvious, like the cluster assignments would be wrong. So and since we are also picking up the initial centroids and the initial seeds, everything we are doing randomly. There is no rule as such. Just we are given that only two clusters we have to go for. So associate the very first iteration, we are getting it as 224.75, 224.75. So now we have to anyhow recalculate the cluster centroids. So for that, we call the recalculate cluster centers. It will go here. Okay, it will do this particular activity and it will calculate the average. So and display the centroids, and again we plot the k-means. Okay, yeah. So this is our new cluster centroids C1, C2, and now this has changed. Okay, so this is step 4. So now we have to do this thing repeatedly again and again until the cluster centers remain constant, or the centroids have been considerably reduced. Okay, so now you can make out that the cluster centroids have moved. So earlier it was here. Now after recomputing the cluster centroids, they have changed their position. Okay, so now in our step 5 we have to do it again and again. That is a repeat statement. So in iteration 2, we calculate the distance of each point to the cluster centroids and assign each point to its nearest cluster. So we do the same thing again and again. Okay, so the same code as from above. We calculate the cluster centroids. We get this particular table again, and then we do the plot k-means. We get this. Now it's repetitive. Now just observe at the SSE. Earlier it was 224.75. Now at iteration 2, just after the first iteration, it got reduced to 50.40. Okay, maybe it's because of the number of data points. In the real world you don't have to deal with, or you anyhow will not get 11 points or 10 points, but this is just for a demonstration purpose. Just for only 10 points you can see the computation, or when you sit with pen and paper to do this thing, it's not worth to do it. So for that thing, uh, we are getting this associate iteration 2. Okay, so we recalculate the centroids again. We get this. So these are the new cluster centers, and this is my plot how it basically looks. So you can see there is a significant difference. There is a left shift that has happened. Okay, so here also you can see a significant difference to this. So the orange center has moved up here. Also the points, uh, yeah, the points are constant, but the centroids are changing. Okay, so centroid is nothing but a representative point, so obviously it should not be somewhere here. So all the points are at this position and the centroid is here, then that means like it's not representative. So it has to move somewhere up. So that's why it's going up here. Similarly for this, let us try to compute it again, and let's see whether we can observe any further changes. Okay, so now this is become repetitive. So that's why this coding is easy for such k-means and all. It becomes very easy when you do automation or modularizing the functions, then it becomes easy. Okay, so at iteration 3 you get this, that is we observe the values are same, 2.627, 4.07, 1.78. Yeah, right. So that means like we can stop at this iteration, because like after this you can do, but that will be waste of time, because the cluster centers are not changing, means they have fixed their positions. Okay, so at this particular step also you can see at iteration 2 you got 42.83. So one takeaway from this discussion is like you can stop the k-means iteration when the cluster centers don't change. So this is one signal where you have to stop this, because in the previous iteration also you got this values. In iteration 3 also you got these values. You can stop, but we are doing a double check on this by calculating the SSE. We'll also check whether we get reduced SSE or not. So here we got it as 50.40. Now at iteration 3 we are getting as 42.83. It's not considerably reduced, but it's better than 50.40. Okay, and then we are recalculating it again. So see at this iteration also it is same. So we got this data here same and here same, and this was the resultant of that particular step. Okay, at iteration 2, at iteration 3 we are getting the same centers, so the cluster centers are not changing anymore. So that means this is your final clustering for k-means. So this was just to give you an idea of how we can do the k-means clustering, and it is very easy to do on Python rather than doing this on pen and paper. Okay, so takeaway of this is like by using simple data structures and simple libraries, we can implement the k-means libraries or the k-means clustering analysis. And uh, since we don't use a real world data, and therefore I'm not doing any clustering analysis on this, because just for you to give you an idea of how the mathematical computations are done, so those things are carried out in this particular main functions. How it actually translates to Python code, the normal mathematics we write, how it translates to mathematical code is written here. So this is how you do the stuffs. So well, that was all regarding the k-means clustering uh, by using Python. So if you found this video helpful, please do like, share, comment, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And thank you very much for watching this video.